Hello, hello, hello. Today is yet another wonderful weekend that we get to spend together on the Iwanity Africa Talk Show. My name is Elvis Boatin, and I'm going to be your host today. Before we go into the conversation that we're having today, I would like to greet, in Zulu language, right? And it is Sawu Bona, all right? I hope I got the pronunciation right. All right, so today we're going to yet engage, on this platform like we usually do, and today we are going to talk about the Zulu Kingdom, right? With emphasis on community, right? How it was community life like, in the Zulu Kingdom, as it were. All right. So we just delve right into it. We're going to look at first of all um, a brief history, right? Of the Zulu people. Do an introduction of the Zulu Kingdom. And how that we are also going to like really focus on the way they live their lives, right? The communal kind of living and all that. So the Zulu were a nation of the Nguni speaking people, right? And as you can see from my slide, they migrated, all the way to the KwaZulu-Natal. That is where they migrated to, and there are many reasons why they actually had to do that, right? From time to time, it's migration or movement has always been one key thing that um, prehistoric, even till now, right? But one of the characteristics of human beings is that we move, and there are different factors for moving. We move for better economic conditions. We move for if the political environment is not right. We move for different reasons. So the Zulu nation, was actually a nation of the Nguni-speaking people in Zulu Natal province, right? And they were a branch of the Southern Bantu. They had a kind of relationship from with the Bantu, and had like the same ethnic lineage, if I could put it that way. They had similarity in language, and they also had like cultural ties, with the Zwazi and the Kosa. The so also, like I was trying to get the click sound. So there's actually a way that they pronounce it. So the interesting thing about the Zulu people is that they happen to be the single largest group in South Africa as we have it today, and about a million, in the not stable, very so they had a very fertile ground, fertile soil, which of course, to a very large extent influenced the way they went about their the kind of economic activities that they engaged in, right? So basically the Zulu people were farmers, right? I mean, you can imagine if you live in an environment or you have migrated to a place where the land is fertile, the land is good, you definitely want to do agriculture, and of course lots of lush, grass, like green land, so essentially the Zulu people were into tilling the ground and of course rearing cows and livestock, and as a matter of fact, livestock forms the very bedrock of the economy, right? So it was believed, it's not just a belief, right? Like if you had a lot of livestock, if you had a lot of cattle, then you were actually like seen as being very, very rich, right? So that is a bit of introduction to the Zulu Kingdom, the Zulu community, and that is the conversation that we're going to have today. All right. So if you're just joining us, you are welcome to the Unity Africa Talk Show, where we talk about stories of prehistoric African communities. How Africa was like before the advent of the colonial masters. So please join this conversation. Let's make it interesting. Let's engage. All right, all right. So a bit of like historic overview, right? And looking at the overview, the historic overview, we are not really going to do justice, to the Zulu people if we don't really talk about, a very prominent person, in the history of the Zulus, as it were, and we're also going to do that. We're going to look at this social hierarchy, and the clan system of the Zulu people. We're also going to look at, community life and cultural practices that existed, among the Zulu people. We're going to look at the traditions and customs, as it were. We're going to look at the role of kinship and leadership, in the Zulu community, and of course, whilst we have these conversations, a very prominent person that we're going to talk about will be Shaka Zulu, right? Then we will go into the kind of military, and the impact of the military, in the community. We'll talk briefly about the kind of religion that they practiced, and then we'll talk about economy and trade. Then we will look at the modern Zulu community, as we have it, in 2024, as it were, or in modern times, right? So essentially, we are going to be tracing the history of the Zulu people, right? Then how did their history impact their sense of community, and how did their sense of community also impact their sustenance and their survival over the years, as it were. All right, all right. So, okay, so I have Elizabeth Boatin join us. Hi, Elvis. Elizabeth Boatin here from Nigeria. It feels great to learn about the Zulu people. Yes, it is really interesting. And thank you so much for joining and for participating, as it were. I have Dixon Itufuk, says greetings. I am Dixon Itufuk Akpan from Atan Ota, Ogun State. So Dixon is joining us all the way from Ogun State. Thank you so much, Dixon, for joining and for participating. Okay, so Dixon says, nice to be here, nice to learn more. I have Yetunde. Okay, so Yetunde is okay, so I think Yetunde sent just gives a finger, to register her presence, as it were. All right, all right. Okay, so Kenneth Kiri says, speaking from Accra, Ghana. Yes, so thank you so much for joining this conversation that we are having today. It is really it is going to be a learning experience for all of us, and I'm super excited that all of us are here. Yeah, so let's delve right into it. But before we go right into it, let's just take a minute or less than a minute for this short commercial. Okay, all right. You're welcome back to the conversation, right? And once again, thank you for joining the conversation that we're having. All right, so far we've talked about, okay, so we've tried to introduce what we are having today, introduction to the Zulu Kingdom, with a focus on community, right? And we are according to my slide, like if you take a look at my slide, we're trying to see, okay, what is even the physical location, right, of the Zulu people that we want to have a conversation about, right? So if you look at the map on the slide, you can see that, okay, they are close to the the ocean, specifically the Indian Ocean, right? And it makes a whole lot of sense, right? Like those people actually migrated to this location, right? Because movement is one thing that really characterizes like people, and so the Zulu people were not an exception. They moved, until they found themselves in that location, where which is known as the KwaZulu Natal, right? And we also did mention at when we started the introduction that these Zulu people were farmers, right? And it makes sense that they were farmers because they had fertile land, they had flowing rivers, and of course their proximity to the Indian Ocean, kind of nurtured the kind of crops that they planted, and I also did mention that one thing that characterized these people was the fact that they were into cattle rearing, and as a matter of fact, cattle the number of cattle that one had, was an indication of how rich, that individual was, right? So a bit of the okay. So how did these people really come about, right? So like that's when we talk about Zenzango Hona, right? This character, was actually the chief or the king, right, in the of the Nguni people, right? Now these Nguni people are those who migrated to this Zulu Natal, and they later became the Zulu people, right? Now the Zulu people were like they were people who lived in clans, right? So before they became powerful Zulu that we know them to be, there were people who lived in clans, like just a little here, a little there, right? And so everybody just minding their business, everybody ruling over their families and ruling over their own clans, right? And the ancestors of the so when we talk about the ancestries, right, the ancestors of the Zulu migrated from West Africa into southeastern Africa during the Bantu migrations about 2000 BC until the 15th century. The Zulu tribe, expanded into a powerful kingdom, where they subdued their surroundings, overcame the challenges of their surroundings, and it became very important that okay, just the language of survival, right? Number is the language of survival, and so it became very important that okay, at some point they needed to just come together, right, to have a more formidable force. But how did this story start, right? So sh- um, 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 Senzan Gohona, I'm having a bit of, I'm not used to the name, was actually the king, and he when Shaka Zulu was born, he was actually born out of wedlock, and so the father, had to like ostracize the mom, so he actually had a very rough beginning, right? Imagine being a little child, and being ostracized with just your mom, and so the mom moved from one place to the other, one village to the other, one clan to the other. In some cases, they didn't really get the best of treatment, and so life was really difficult. But the interesting thing about it, about the difficulties of life, is that, if life doesn't break you, right, yeah, then it makes you stronger, right? And so as the story unfolds, we're going to like appreciate and get to, see how that the challenges that, this young boy went through, how these challenges actually molded him to become the great warrior that he was, that he later became, and how that was also instrumental in helping him to like unite other clans, other little communities, right, to become that great and mighty Zulu kingdom, as it were. So back to the story. So he, with the mother, moved from one place to the other among the Nguni clan, and they finally got they finally got accommodation, right, by Dingizwazu, Wayo, who decided to like take them in, right? And so it was actually under the leadership of Dingin Wayo that he grew, he grew, learned about the tactics, military tactics, and this were events that actually happened in the in the 18th century, 17th to 18th century, So in 18, so we can really say that like in the 1816, that was when the Zulu Kingdom, as it were, was born, because that was when Shaka Zulu, had to return to his hometown because his father had died, and then he had become like a grown up man, and so decided to go back, to claim what was rightly his. And of course, by this time, he is a grown man. By this time, he has learned the act of war. By this time, he had become a very great warrior, and so he went with a lot of skill and with military might, as it were. Now, what is the particular striking thing about the social hierarchy, of African people, and more specifically the Zulu people, right? And how this social hierarchy is really important, in the story about Shaka Zulu, as it were. Now, in not just in the in Zulu empire, but in Africa, right? We have this hierarchy, systems, social system where there is that individual. That individual gets to a point where he grows up, he's of marital age, and he gets married, and he begins to build, a family, but of course, we don't just do nuclear family, right? So we are all integrated into the extended family, right? And of the extended family, by extension, goes into forming the clan, as it were. Then when the clan, gets bigger and bigger, we form the tribe, then from the tribe, the society kind of keeps increasing and it gets bigger and bigger. And the reason this is very important is that here we are, when we trace the history of Zulu's father, Shaka Zulu's father, and how that he was a king in a clan, and these different clans were in different parts, right? And when he came back and needed, okay, he knew that, okay, military might was very, very important. And so he decided, he started looking at how he could actually merge the different, clans that existed into one community, right? That will become strong and formidable. And it's really, and he was able to do that besides his military, tactics and strength, for the fact that when he left his father's, like house with a mom, they moved from clans to clan, and so he also had a very good understanding of the different clans, that existed in different parts of the then prehistoric South Africa, as it were. So as you can see from the slide, so we have the individual, we have the extended family, we have the clan, and we have the tribe. So the Zulu clan, system with the Nkosi, as a particular leader, fostered a sense of belonging and mutual responsibility. And the sense of belonging and mutual responsibility kind of created a sense of that community where you don't just belong to a community, right? You belong to a community not just by number but by responsibility, not just by number but by contribution, right? So young people, in the societies, if you're a man, or if you're a boy, you are trained to be a warrior, right? Because being a warrior in such communities was actually, you expressing your sense of responsibility to that community, and being in readiness to defend the community, as it were. So what was the community life and cultural practices really like in the Zulu society, as it were? So you can see from my slide, like I did mention earlier, that there was a society, the Zulu community was a community where young men were warriors, right? You are right from being a boy, you are actually like trained to be a warrior, and it was really a thing of pride, to like to want to become a warrior, as it were, because I mean, like, it gives you that sense of pride that, okay, you can defend your family, you can defend your wife and children, and beyond that, you can also defend the community that you're a part of. All right. I'm trying to check comment session. So All right. So the Strategy Club, hi everyone. The Strategy Club is a tribe of emerging entrepreneurs operating in Africa with a big vision, but scanty resources. Great, but no Godfather ready to bootstrap their ventures and escalate impact or income. Solopreneurs, digipreneurs, and entrepreneurs are welcome. Well, we are glad to be here. Locally made Africa entrepreneurs and consumer goods. Thank you, the Strategy Club, for joining. I have Kathy Smiles from Accra also joining. Thank you, Kathy, for joining. It feels good to have you here. So yeah, so I did mention, right? So we are, if you're just joining, we are talking about the Zulu community. We are talking about the Zulu Kingdom, with emphasis on the Zulu community, a sense of community, right? And we've talked about how the Zulu people migrated, and to a land that is more fertile, and the land that actually enhanced agriculture, and agriculture, was actually the bedrock of the economy, and not just growing of crops, but also rearing of cattle. And as a matter of fact, how rich someone was, was based on how many cattle that a person had, because even when they were going to, I mean, if you want to go get married, right, your bride price was going to be paid in cows, so the more cows you had, the more you were seen as being very rich, right, and so that is the conversation that we've been having so far. So the women were basically into tilling of the ground, like going to the farm, making sure that there was food, um, in the house, so warriors can have strength to fight, as it were. So what are some of let's look at the traditions, as it were, traditions and customs of the Zulu people, right? Like in every society in Africa, right? There are traditions, there are ways of life, there are things that make us distinct, there are things that kind of make us stand out, there are rules and regulations, whether spoken or not spoken, whether written or not written. There are codes of conduct that regulate our societal behavior, right? So in looking at the traditions and customs of the Zulu people, one thing that was one striking, tradition, a very vibrant tradition among the Zulu people was the Ume Mulo ceremony, which was actually like a rite of passage, right? So this ceremony was actually like when women get to a particular age, right? Like a rite of passage, the society sees them as having grown, having reached a point of maturity, transitioning from childhood or adolescence to womanhood, right? And so they will carry out this ume mulo ceremony, which kind of brings kind of bring that kind of community, right? Because women, across the Zulu community will see their fellow women who are equally transitioning from childhood or from adolescence to womanhood, right? And this always kind of went with great celebration and of course, also like sacrifices to the gods, right? Because the Zulu people were highly traditional people before the advent of Christianity. Were highly traditional people. They believed in ancestral worship as well. So all these practices were like incorporated. The dresses were very beautiful, as you can see from the picture in the slide. Women colorfully adorned. And I must say here, really, like bead, wearing of beads was actually like a very was part of the dressing of the Zulu people, and it wasn't just for the purpose of beautification. Yeah, it was also beads were also forms of kind of communication, right? So when women in Zulu community, when they wore white beads, for instance, it meant that these are it spoke of their purity, spoke of their innocence. It's that okay. It also indicated that okay, these women were not married, as it were. And for men, it's that if you back in the day, if you saw men wearing green beads, it meant that they were also not married and that they were also content. So beads. The Zulu people wore beads, right? It spoke about their social class. It also communicated whether they were married or they were not married, right? And a very striking thing that I must really lay emphasis, as far as traditions and ceremonies were concerned, is the rite of passage, right? And we have this rite of passage, in different communities across Africa, right? Some places the rite of passage is for boys, and the same thing in the Zulu community. But I must really say that more strikingly is the rite of passage for women, right? Because like women were like also a very more like bedrock, of the community, right? Because the men were warriors; they will go for war. The women were the ones who will keep the home and make sure that everything and the children were also taken care of. So it was really a big celebration that the Zulu community, as it were, like really held in high esteem, as it were. And you can see very beautiful dressing, very beautiful use of beads, beautiful colors, bright colors, and those bright colors were also like also spoke about the sense of happiness, right? And the fact that these people were like a happy people, right? Colors are also like symbols, as it were. So the brighter the colors, the more indicative they are to the fact that the people are celebrating and the people are like a happy people, as it were. Now, so we've been talking about the Zulu kingdom, right? And we cannot really. I know I've mentioned it before, right? But like the defining moment, right? Of the Zulu kingdom, what really brought it out to the world, what made the Zulu kingdom significant, is actually like the Shaka Zulu, what his impact was, and I have like earlier mentioned that this is a little child who was born out of wedlock, and so he was sent away, right? And what does not kill you can make you, right? And so moving from one clan to the other, and finally, being welcomed into the home, of another king in another clan, and of course him growing to become a warrior, learning the military skills in those societies, and becoming very strong, and of course coming back to his homeland, when his father died, to teach, the military skills that and the rules of combat, introduce new rules of combat, as it were, actually, and not just that, right? The peak of it was his ability to actually unite the different clans, because I actually mentioned earlier on that the Zulu, we had lots of clans, in different places, right? And Shaka Zulu was one person who was able to unite the different clans, to make them a formidable armed force. And then the community was united, the different clans, communities were actually united under a common identity, and this were the things that this were the rule, the roles that kings, and leaders, in the then society actually played. So they were not just ruling, they were not just sitting on thrones, they were the king or the leader, the leaders were symbol of unity, symbol of oneness, and they were also seen as mediators, before the people, and the gods, and in a case where maybe there was any external aggression, right? They also mediated between the one clan and the other clan, right? So those were the roles that the kings, and the community leaders actually played in the then Zulu community, as it were. All right. Right. So, okay. So I have Zoe Octavia, Abazie joining. Okay, so Zoe says a true West African listening from Nigeria. Okay, yeah, a true West African listening from Nigeria. Thank you so much, Zoe, for joining this conversation. I have Daisy from Accra joining. It's really nice to have you, Daisy. It's always a pleasure to have you on the on this talk show and participating. So if you're just joining, we are talking about the Zulu people, and more specifically, we're looking at the sense of community that the Zulu people, had, and that if not for the sense of community, maybe they wouldn't even have survived the aggression that they had from the external aggression that they had from the British, right? And one factor or one person that was a unifying figure, is Shaka Zulu, and I also did mention that this was somebody who was born out of wedlock, and as a result of that, his father, sent the mother away. They got ostracized, from one clan to the other. Eventually he survives the ups and downs, the hardships, and he grows up, and when the father, died, he decided to come back to claim his what was rightly his, as it were, and that became the turning point, of the Zulu people, as it were. All right, so let's look at the military, and its community impact, the military and the community impact of the military. Every society, of course, every society definitely will have people that will defend it, against external aggression, this was not an exception, right, in the then Zulu community, right? So we had the AmaButo system, which brought about like young men together, in military regiments, right? And I did mention that, okay, the Zulu people were a people of military might, right? And the orientation, was that, okay, hey, if you're born and you're a boy, you're born for war, right? You're born to fight. We live to fight. And it wasn't just fighting, but fighting as a sense of responsibility to your community, fighting to defend the integrity of your clan, fighting to defend your wife, your children, and so to ensure that this was systematic, to ensure that this was this was something that was an integral part of the society. They actually made a regiment out of it, So once you're born through the Amabuto system, you are brought together, where you see other boys, and you go through the military training. And this was also like a sense of community, right? So we have the larger, Zulu community, right? But then in this large Zulu community, we also had like bits here and there, right? So if you are a young woman, and you're going through the rite of passage, right, to becoming an adult, right, that is a community out there. It is a community. You can have people that you can associate with, right? Because you have things in common, which is the fact that all of you are transitioning from being adolescents, or from being children, to becoming young adults, right? And if you were a boy, and you go through the Amabuto system, and you're being put through this regimen. It also gives you that sense of community, right? Because it gives you the sense of community and the sense of pride that, okay, you are being trained to become a warrior, right? And it was really a thing of pride, where you are actually associating with other warriors and other warriors in training, as it were, people who are training, people who are going through discipline, to be fit to defend their community in time of war, right? So these are all like different activities that gave a sense of community to the to the Zulu people, right? So the military was actually like, of course, like we know, right? The people, the through the Amabuto system, young boys will go through regiments, to become military, right? And not just to defend the kingdom, but to foster lifelong brotherhood, right? Even like in modern times, right? Like in modern times, in times of war, there's that sense of brotherhood, right? When soldiers, go to war, because at that moment, your neighbor is not your neighbor is not the person that is close to you in your house. Your neighbor is the person that that has your back, that will defend you, that will make sure that you return in times of war. You return home, alive, as it were. So this the military was a form of brotherhood. It was a form of community, and this Amabuto system also instilled a sense of duty, to both the king and the community. So so there's a king, the king has a sense of duty to the community, right? To ensure that the community was protected. The military, also had a sense of duty to the king to ensure that the king was protected. So if the king is protected because of a strong military, then the king will be able to protect the community at large. And as you can see, right, from the slide, the picture um, of the Zulu people, the Zulu, the military, right? With the stakes. The stakes had the spear sharp, like spear in their hands. And I must really say that one of the, things, one of the strategies that Shaka Zulu actually also brought, like into his hometown or into his tribe when he returned after the death of his father, was close combat. So the Zulu people had this culture, the warriors, right, had this culture of always fighting, from afar. So they had, their weapons, and they would throw their weapons from afar, and part of the tactics and the strategies that Shaka Zulu introduced was close combat, where you are able to get close to your enemy, as it were, in close combat. And to be able to really do that was he introduced the buffalo strategy, right? Where like the military was actually like stratified, or put in like in three wings, as it were. So it's not just a group of people who are just chanting, and shouting, and against their enemies, but people who were very strategic in war. So we have those who are coming in front, and those who are coming from the wings, right? So that way, your enemies are not your enemies have a bit of divided attention, because you're not sure whether they will face the people who are directly in front of them or the people who are coming from the wings, right? And so that close combat and the buffalo's tactics were some of the like striking things, strategies that Shaka Zulu introduced to the military. So the military was really really impactful because they protected the king, and a strong military is a peaceful community, right? So when a king it has a peace of mind, then he can actually defend the integrity of the community that he has managed to protect, as it were. All right. So if you're just joining this conversation, on this talk show today, you're on to the Winity Africa Talk Show, and today we are looking at the Zulu Kingdom. And what we have done so far really is to look at how the Zulu people, came to be, and what were some of the things that informed that we actually like made them economically powerful, right? And we established the fact that these were people, they migrated to us, like they migrated to us, the land that was fertile, and so they were able to like cultivate the ground, to grow crops, to also like rear animals. Cattle was actually one thing that was symbolic of how rich you were, and we also talked about the fact that they had traditions and ceremonies, like the rite of passage, where young women transited into adulthood, and this was, one striking thing was that the women were actually like well beautified for such occasions. And we also talked about the fact that beads were not just beautiful, accessories, but they were also like forms of communication, right? So when women wore white beads, it communicated to the community that they were unmarried, they were single, and when young men wore green beads, it meant that they were also single, and yeah. So we've also talked about the military and the impact of the military, as it were, on the society, talking about the fact that the military, itself was a sense of community. They protected the king, and the king had the sense of responsibility to unite the kingdom, and also to protect the kingdom against external aggression, as it were. So, um, yeah. So yes, indeed. So, Zoe says rich culture, and history. Yes, indeed, very rich culture. So let's look into the religion and beliefs, of the Zulu people, as it were. Now, for the Zulu people, just like every other African nation, as it were, they believed in ancestral worship. They believed in their ancestors, and the power that the ancestors had. So ancestors were ever present. They believed that the ancestors were ever present. Like wherever they were there. They were there. Physically with them, they were there. In the heavens. Because the Zulu people actually, Zulu means the sky, from heaven. So they are one African, group of Africans who believe that their ancestry is actually from the heavens, right? They believe that their forefathers came from the sky, from heaven. And so at every point in time, right, they believe that the ancestors are present with them, whether watching over them from the skies or watching over them from their sides, guiding and protecting, the living. Ancestor worship, was also like formed the spiritual backbone of the community, ensuring that there were deep connections between the past, the present, and the future. So those who are some of the and religion is really powerful. Religion and beliefs, right? Really, really powerful, because it gives a sense of community, as it were. Even in modern societies, right? You cannot people go through a lot, and sometimes how their way of escape, from the harsh realities of life, is that they build a community, a religious community, where they are able to connect to the spiritual, and through that process, they are able to even maintain a sense of they're able to maintain a bit of sanity, as it were. So, religion was also like a form of communal kind of living, as it were, because people who had similar belief systems will come together, and and offer sacrifices, and to their ancestors, and that also gave them that sense of community. So from the slide here, you can see the jumping, this and it even happens like in contemporary times, right, where the Zulu, you see them jump high, like really jumping high into the sky. So this picture, shows the Zulu people, jumping in dancing ritual, the KwaZulu Natal region in South Africa. you know Now, this is also part of the tradition. So this is the dance that they do when during burial ceremonies, right? So during burial ceremonies, one of the ways that they mourn, and carry out the ceremonies, is when they carry out this dance. So I mean, like, if you never knew this, right now you know. So anywhere you see this dance, let it take just go back, let it take your mind to the fact that this jumping high into the sky was one of the ways that the Zulu people actually um how they celebrate. Not celebrate is really not the word, but how they mourned their dead, as it were. you know so what about the economy and trade, right? The economy and trade, like I did mention, the economy of the Zulu people was measured by cattle. because cattle was practically like everything, right? And even in contemporary times, right? So I mean, they will get meat from cattle, they will get milk from cattle, they will use cattle to pay bride price, they will use cattle to settle disputes, so it really makes sense, right? Like in a culture where like you use cattle for practically everything, it will mean that okay, the more you have the cattle, the more economic power you actually like you commanded, as it were. So cattle were like the cornerstone of the Zulu wealth, structure, as it were, while agriculture sustained their daily life. So essentially, agriculture, right, was like the bedrock of the Zulu community, right, and it was the basis for trade, right, but then beyond just the crops, right? Like the more cattle that any family had, any single individual had, the more the person was seen as being wealthy. So cooperative labor in farming and cattle keeping reinforced community bonds, while trade with neighbors also strengthened ties, right? So, even the kind of economic activities and trade activities that they engaged in were also like further reinforced the sense of community, as it were. Practically everything was based on communal living, right? Because these were not really like very very big societies. These were clans that came together to form tribes and to become like a kingdom, right? So it was a case where you even form like great bond with the people that you constantly trade with, and in contemporary times it's still the same thing, right? If you're a business person, you have your customers, right? And you try to maintain your customers. You form there's a sense of community, a sense of connection with your customers. You provide good customer service to your customers to ensure that okay, there is cordial relationship, there is respect, because the respect was one thing that was really held in high esteem, among the Zulu community. So even in the sense of trade, you ensure that there's a sense of respect for the people that you are transacting with, and because of that sense of respect, that sense of community, there was there was growth of the economy, right? They didn't have issues among themselves. There were no, they didn't, there wasn't a case of okay strife, and so that became very very powerful to in building the community, and not just giving people not just a sense of peace, where there was no war, but a sense of togetherness for trade, a sense of togetherness that brought about development, as it were. All right, so last but not the least, we're going to be looking at the modern Zulu community, as it were, right? So we have been tracing the history of the Zulu people, right? So in modern times, right? Who are the Zulu people in modern times? Do they exist? Are they having any impact, as it were? So today, the Zulu community remains, still remains vibrant, right? Because the blood is still there. So they are still a vibrant part of the South African, like cultural fabric. Even like till date, traditional ceremonies, their traditional ceremonies are still, observed. Their language has not gone extinct, because and that's the beauty of having a sense of community. When you have a sense of community, it helps you to maintain and to safeguard like your culture and what you have. And I think that to a large extent, that is what the Zulu people have been able to like have succeeded in maintaining. They've maintained their ceremonies, they maintained the richness of their culture and their language. Their customs continue to play a vital role even in modern Zulu life. The Zulu people also play an important role in modern South Africa politics, and also like in modern societies, as it were. The province of KwaZulu-Natal is the heartland of the Zulu culture, and it is rightly so, right? Because when they migrated, the Bantu people migrated, and finally settled even in the KwaZulu-Natal, I mean, this is where the fought their wars. This is where they built their economy, right? And so it is really it's really interesting to know that many years after, right, the KwaZulu-Natal, still remains the heartland, of the Zulu culture, and it's also a very significant place, in modern day South Africa, as it were. So we have like leaders such as Mango Sutu, Butelezi, who is the founder of the Inkatha Freedom Party, the IFP, and they've been prominent in South Africa political life. Additionally, Zulu traditions continue to thrive, blending modern influences, to form a more dynamic cultural identity. And I think that that is a key thing, right, for all of us, regardless of the peculiarities of our culture, and the culture, as they say, is dynamic, and the dynamism, of, obtained in culture is the fact that we evolve, culture evolves, right? We take away the things that the aspect of culture that that hinders us from like making progress, moving forward, and we embrace and like integrate into our culture other things that are necessary for survival, that we find, that kind of interplay as we like interact with other people from other cultures, right? In present day, like in so I did mention earlier on that the Zulu people were traditional people. They believe in ancestral worship, but of course, the advent of the British, also brought about the Christianity. So like we now have we have in the Zulu community, we have Christianity, and we also have like the traditional worship, which is ancestral worship, as it were. Okay, so so Zoe says Zulu means the sky. Awesome. Yeah, Zulu means the sky. There are one group of people who believe that their beginning started from the sky, started from heaven, as it were. So you say such athletic dance moves. Yeah. So I guess you are referring to the the dance where they jump into the sky. I guess this is what you're referring to, as it were. All right. So this has been the conversation so far, talking about the Zulu people. And how the community, how the community evolved, over time, and how that the community is still even very vibrant, in modern day South Africa, as it were. So if you at whatever point that you join this conversation, my name is Evers Boateng, and this is the Immunity Africa Talk Show. Today we have been talking about the Zulu Kingdom, and essentially what we have been discussing is we took a look at the fact that the Zulu people, who are part of the Nguni-speaking people, KwaZulu in KwaZulu-Natal province, how that they migrated to the KwaZulu-Natal land, and how that they engaged in agriculture, and they also reared cattle, right? And that they prospered, in rearing in agriculture because of the proximity of their land to the Indian Ocean, right? So they had good land, which fostered the agriculture. We also looked at like the historical overview, and I did mention that we cannot really talk about the history of the Zulu people without talking about Shaka Zulu, right? And the story of Shaka Zulu is that he was born out of wedlock, and so his mother was ostracized, and so he moved from the mother moved with him from one clan to the other. Some people were hostile to them, until he finally got, he was finally taken to the shelter, into the shelter of Dingi's Wayo, and that is where he learned his military skills. And when he came back to South Africa, to his hometown, to his tribe, when his father died, he was able to like show this new strategy of war, close combat, thereby building the military, and we talked about the fact that typically the Zulu kingdom, before it became the big community, as it were, it started with, just like other African countries, right? Started with individuals, who were an integral part of an external, extended family, right? And this extended families formed the clan, and also formed the tribe, And so when Shaka Zulu came back, he used his leadership skills and diplomacy to unite all the clans to have a more formidable front, And also did mention that another sense of community, of the Zulu people is that young people, young boys, went through regimen, a strict regimen to become warriors, and that this what was used to measure prosperity was, like how many cows you had, because cows were practically used for everything. So they talk about the fact that the women, cultivated crops in the farm. So men were warriors, women cultivated crops, right? Which was also a form of like um, division, right? Like division of labor, as it were. This is a typical example of division of labor, right? And so even in contemporary times, right, we as Africans, we are not supposed to be divided, along the lines of ethnicity. We are supposed to be united, have a united front as Africans, right? Through division of labor. So we need to know the different things that we do so well, do it so well, and see how the different things that we have mastery in can integrate, to come together, and we can integrate our different skills and our different strengths, to give us that formidable front, and put us on a global scale, right? So even agriculture or economic wise, right? We can form a sense of community that kind of enhances productivity, and places us in on a global scale, right? We also talked about the traditions and customs, and I talked about the popular Zulu custom, very popular and very vibrant Zulu custom, the Mulo ceremony, which was rite of passage for women to move from adolescence and from young women to becoming adults, right? Which was also characterized by beautiful beads, right? And that in the South African culture, beads were not just for beautification; they were also a form of communication, right? And I did talk about the fact that and when women wore white beads, it was a sign that they were single, and that and when men wore green beads, it was a sign that they were content, and they were not also married, right? We also talked about what was the role of kinship and leadership, in community, and we did mention that the king was seen as more than just a ruler, but he was actually the very heart, of the kingdom. And just like we know, right, when the heart stops beating, every part of the body falls apart, right? And so the sense of military, right, was, so like in the society, you had like, young men going through the regiment to become warriors so that they can protect, and the king, and the king, being the heart of the community, will protect the community by extension, and that the women were, a respected and integral part of the community because they took care of the home, right? So when men were out there at war, fighting, to protect the integrity of their community, the women were at home, also fighting, right? Because keeping the home is also a form of battle, as it were. So these were some of the roles of kinship and leadership in the Zulu community, as it were. And then we also moved ahead to talk about the military and community impact. We talked about the fact that they protected everyone, and that it also created a sense of brotherhood, as it were, because you know that, okay, your neighbor is not just somebody who is your closest to you, but a person who watches your back. And when warriors went for war, right, among themselves, they had that sense of community and that sense of brotherhood, because every one of them protected every one of them to ensure that each one of them returned back home, right? And we also talked about religion, and beliefs, right? Because a group of people form communities based on their values and belief system, and that and this was not an exception among the Zulu people. So the Zulu people, had belief system that united them. They had value system that united them, and religion religion was also one strong factor that united them, and that these Zulu people were essentially like ancestral worshippers, right? And of course, the advent of the British also kind of introduced Christianity into the Zulu kingdom, as it were. And this picture here, I did talk about the fact that it was one of the ceremonial dances for when they lost someone for burial. Then we talked about the economy and trade, and that the Zulu community succeeded, and became more formidable because they were peaceful people, they were respectful people, they respected one another within their clans and within their tribes and within the larger community. And so it also made it very um it made it very easy for them to like trade, right? And they were trading in cattle, they were trading in the crops, they were trading, and that wealth was measured by how many cattle you had, because practically, if you wanted to get married, you would use cattle for a bride price. Whatever you wanted to do, basically, it had to do with cattle. And so it makes sense, right, to judge a man's wealth by the number of cattle that he had. And of course, the final part of the conversation was talking about, the modern Zulu people, right? We talked about the fact that in modern society, in modern South Africa, the Zulu people have still been very vibrant, in modern South Africa, right? So also they talk about the Mangosuthu and Buthelezi, who is the founder of the Nkatha Freedom Party, and so not just that they had a very rich and vibrant, history, that sense of history and that vibrance, like that sense of community, like let's come together to ensure that we build that that warrior spirit, that fighting warrior spirit has always been them. And so they in present day South Africa, it is about integration of culture, right? And generally speaking, I also talked about the fact that the beautiful thing about culture is that culture evolves, and it evolves as we integrate with other cultures. We take the strength of other cultures and imbibe them to the strength of our cultures, and new culture emerges, right? And we can take this into even our daily living, right? And everything we do, right? The way life was before is not the way life should be, and it's not the way life should be tomorrow. We just keep evolving. All right, so that is about it on today's Unity Africa Talk Show. It's been wonderful having you engage. Please like, share, and subscribe. We are trying to build a community here, and one way that we can build that community really is for everybody to be a part of it, and to share the good news, right? So that we can build that strong community. So until next week, enjoy the rest of the weekend and have a wonderful week ahead. I'll be looking forward to for us to engage next week, on this wonderful talk show, Unity Africa Talk Show. Thank you.